Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Grace Church Online Edition this morning. It's going to be a great service today. It's great to be back with you. My name is Brad, if I haven't got to meet you yet. I'm excited about being with everybody this morning. If you're joining us online, wherever you're joining us from, I'd encourage you to reach out and say hello so you don't have to sit here and hear me talking the whole time. I'll talk back and forth with you. I'll get connected with you here, but I'm excited about being able to be together today in our service. It's going to be wonderful. So we've got a great service plan today, and I'm glad that you made it out online here today to watch it. So hopefully you're having a good morning. I know it's maybe just getting started for some of us. Maybe you got that breakfast going good at home, or maybe you're just kind of rolling out with your coffee and just thinking about how do I get started this morning, and well, you did it and you're here. So we're glad to have you here and glad to be together. So just want to draw your attention to a couple things. One of them is we do have an app, so make sure that you download that there. Oh, hey, Colin, good to see you this morning. Nice and early, I love it. Kirk and Marie, good morning, everybody. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. Hopefully not too much crazy's happened yet. It's early yet. It looks like the sun is trying to figure out what it's going to do outside. A little overcast, a little wet out maybe, but it's all right. It's going to be a good Sunday, perfect Sunday for watching church at home, it looks like. So maybe you're with your families or whatever. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, we have a lot of ways to get connected. One of them we have is our church app. I'd encourage you to check that out. But yeah, it's going to be a great service today. We spend some time, of course, worshiping through song. You hear a good encouragement from Pastor Jeff just about ways in which the church can hopefully be a help to our community during this tough times. This past week, some of our schools have started, and some realize that they'll be starting online and stuff like that. So you have some parents scrambling. So we as a church want to help out with that. So you'll hear a little bit more from Pastor Jeff about that stuff. So that'll be cool. And then Pastor Joe will share with us today. So it's going to be a good time today. So we've been in the series Stops Along the Way. It's been fun to see, all that, all the many ways in which Jesus worked with his followers and kind of look at Jesus through his followers' perspective. And when we draw close to Jesus, when we get a close picture of him, it's amazing how it encourages us and challenges us and those things. So yeah, so it's going to be a good one today. Good morning there, Cindy. Nice to see everybody getting going this morning. So are you guys coffee drinkers? Anybody drink coffee before church? Maybe need a little caffeine kick to get going. Anybody enjoy just, when you drink coffee, people always say, about coffee and liking coffee and all that stuff. I'm not really sure how coffee really tastes because I put so much cream in mine. I always drink it like it's a candy bar, so I don't feel like I'm a good coffee connoisseur. But it amazes me how different people have their taste buds where they can taste different types of coffee and like the different black ones. And it's like, oh, I like this coffee. I don't like this one. I'm like, it all tastes the same unless you put cream in there. So, I don't know. So maybe you're ready to go this morning. So, hey, a couple of things to as you think about the service and ways to interact and ways to really dive in. One of them I encourage you to look at is if you go on our website, go to our online weekend experience. So just click on your website there, bath.graceohio.org. And you can click right on there, scroll down to where it says online live weekend experience. If you click on that, you'll see there's a lot of different things, ways for you to get plugged in. The reason why I'd like to draw your attention to that is because we want to make sure that we as a church are not only connecting with you, but connecting with your family and providing opportunities for you as a family. If you have little ones at home or teenagers or elementary age kids at home and you're looking for ways to help them grow spiritually, because during times like now where oftentimes hope can be hard to find or disappointment feels like it's right around the corner, it's good to be reminded that there's a lot more to life than just what we see and with our circumstances. And so if we could help our children understand the wonder and awe of God, whenever they're little, and help them to see that they're loved by God and that he wants to be their friend and all those things. And then as they grow older, if we can help them to see, by following Jesus, how they can learn about making wise decisions and really live through their life and become the people God has called them to be. And then as they're teenagers, help them to get feet set on the Lord so that they can find their identity in Him. We know being a young person, maybe you remember being a teenager, it can be hard sometimes to you start questioning, who am I? Really, what is my purpose here for? And really that's the question that has to be answered before you really become an adult. And so it's our job to help our children understand and start discovering their identity and all that stuff. Well, we want them to get that set on Jesus. So that's why we have every weekend have opportunities for them to get connected on online here. So we have our Power Kids. We'll have their teaching and their videos and stuff like that. That will be all age appropriate ways in which it draws them back to the heart of God and points them to Jesus. And so Jesus can be really what it is that what they build their foundation on. So I'd encourage you always to check that out. And maybe this would be a time for you as a parent to really dive in and say, how can I help my child get connected? How can I help them become, deeper followers of Jesus, or maybe introduce them to Jesus for the first time? Well, we want to try to equip you with those kind of resources and help you with all the different things there. So it's going to be good. So excited about today. So you guys are already getting it into coffee. Becca, you love some coffee. That's good. Colin likes coffee in church. That's his favorite kind. All right. Good morning, Marie. A lot of you guys jumping on here. That's good to see. Good to see you all today. Black coffee. Angel raised her hand. Yeah, I know. Pastor Joe even jumped on here. He's just he'll be speaking to us here in a minute. So he's like. He's so versatile. He just does everything. He comments, but he doesn't drink coffee. So if you ever want to buy Joe a gift, don't buy him coffee. He just doesn't drink it. So no good for him. So you have to find out what he likes, and then and encourage you to enjoy being with him. So yeah, so it's good to see you all today. You see, there's our link right there for our weekend experience. Good morning, Tim. Good to have you on here today. And Kirk, you're doing bulletproof coffee. Okay. Well, there you go. You're ready. You're up and ready to roll, man. This week will be a bulletproof coffee week. That sounds intense. Kind of like camping. Get it? Intense. All right. Never mind. Okay. Sorry, my jokes. They really hit hard. So yeah. But anyway, so if we look for opportunities to get connected, that's what we do. So if you go on a weekend experience thing, see Power Kids, you see the videos on there, a bunch of stuff that's happening, or for our teenagers as well. And then of course we've been here at the church having weekly programming in person, for everybody 4 years old and up. But I want to make sure that you know that if you're still staying at home and you want to do things virtually, there are options for you. So our middle school, we have our weekly devotional on there through our overtime stuff, and then also, we have different programs that are happening, so you can check that out. But if you do want to get your middle schooler around some children, some other middle schoolers, wearing a mask and those things, I'd encourage you to check out our overtime experience that happens on Sunday evenings at our Montrose building. It's a great opportunity for them. They've been having a lot of fun. They just started that this month, and it's been going crazy. And I think tonight they're having a big foam party, so they'll be at 5:30 tonight here at the Montrose building. So they're working hard to do what they can do amidst restrictions and all that stuff, but we really believe it's important to, when it's appropriate, to provide social interaction for our middle schoolers. So you can check that out. And Melody, you had salted caramel coffee. Oh, that does sound good. I like the salted caramel taste. I'm not much for usually mixing the sweet and the savory, but salted caramel is good for me. I love that even like on ice cream, like those kind of things too. So that's good. It's good to be together. Yeah, you guys picking on me for my dad jokes. That's nice. Hey, if you guys got any, I'd say if you got any better ones, share them. But I'm not sure how good the filter is on this stuff, so maybe you better not share your jokes. So hopefully you had a good morning so far. I'd encourage you also to look for ways to, offer hope to other people. I think one of the ways that you can do that is by sharing our services. And so if you're watching this, maybe this would be a good time to invite your friends. Say, hey, I'm watching this. You want to watch this with me? You can invite your friends to watch along with you on social media. Just share it on your stream on Facebook or whatever, and say, hey, I'm watching this service. Want to watch this with me or something like that? Because I really believe that that today they're going to hear a great message of hope, and that's what people need today. It's something that I think we find in Jesus Christ and Christ really alone. A hope that's based on something other than circumstance. other than circumstances or what we can see, but something so much bigger. So I'd encourage you to share that, to maybe text your friends, say, hey, I'm at church this morning online, maybe you're just waking up. And so maybe your kids are still sleeping. We do have another service that's coming up after this one, but it's a good opportunity to get them connected, and I would encourage you to share that, and so because it's a great thing to do. So anyway, today through our services, I would encourage you as you go through the service. I don't know about you, but it's always so encouraging to me when we think about the music and the songs and stuff like that, to be able to spend some time, focus our hearts on God. And so those songs have been very good to me and have been encouraging to me. I don't know about you, but I use music a lot. I listen to music a lot when I'm driving and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, I listen to a lot of Christian music, and a lot of times it's not just even about. It's not even just about listening to music because I like it, but I like listening to music so much because it reminds me that this isn't my home. It's kind of like I don't know how to say it. It's a good reminder that there's something bigger than me out there, in Jesus. And so I kind of listen to. So I kind of look at it as a road sign. When you're driving down the road and you see, like it says, like Akron, 10 miles or something like that. I like listening to music because it's a good reminder. It's like, hey, you're traveling on this journey, but don't worry, heaven's coming, and all that stuff. So it's always a good reminder because there's so many distractions out there in the world, and I know that if I drift and if I let my eyes get distracted by other things. Things can get me down, or I can just kind of get robbed of that. So this COVID time has been a good sifter for me in my own walk with the Lord, because it's helped reveal some things in me that I find my happiness in outside of the Lord Jesus. I was always a big sports guy, but it's been kind of weird throughout this time that sports has just kind of drifted a little bit, because it hasn't been happening and stuff. And so, but I found myself at the beginning how much it meant to me, or how much, sports, I'd just let so much of my enjoyment come from it. There's nothing wrong with having enjoyment. I'm enjoying watching NBA basketball right now, but it's like it's just about how we can put too much stock in those things, or for some of us, maybe it's our comfort or even our safety in those things. But that's why I listen to good Christian music sometimes. It's a good reminder that don't get your heart set on things that aren't real, that don't last forever. And so that's what church is all about this morning. Well, not about that specifically, but it's about fixing our eyes on Jesus and the love that we're supposed to have for the Lord with all of our heart and with all of our soul, with all of our minds. So, it's a good time. So I'd encourage you throughout the service, fix your eyes on Jesus. Keep asking yourself, what is it that he wants me to learn today? Or really, even more importantly, just who is Jesus, and just trying to dig in and getting captivated by him. And then let God speak to your heart. And I encourage you, if he does speak to your heart and as he's working in your life, I would encourage you to reach out to us, because we'd love to participate that with you. Participate in your spiritual journey with you. And we know it's a big bridge. It's a big gap sometimes to bridge to get connected. There's, especially when you're at home, maybe you feel like I'm home and they're there. It's online. I'm safe. I'm all that stuff. And you kind of think, I don't know if I want to reach out and ask for prayer or ask for help. But we will make sure that you do that, because we love to pray with you and pray for you any way that we can, because we want to partner with you, because we want Grace Church to be not just a hour-long online service experience for you or for any of us, but we want it to be where we're a family, that's thriving together or surviving together, or going through difficult times together. But we want to be together. So if there's ways in which we can help you with that, just reach out and just get connected with us. So as you're spending some time listening to what God has for you today, as you spend some time thinking about him, as you hear from Pastor Joe this morning, and you think there's something pops up in your mind, or where God's working in your heart, you want to talk to somebody about that, reach out to us. You can click on the connection tab right at the top of the live stream, or you can send us even a direct message right there on Facebook, or on the app. You can use the connection card on there as well. So lots of ways to get connected with us, but we really want to make it as easy as possible for you to reach out. But just know that we're thankful for you. We're glad that we're able to do church together. It's fun to be able to join up with each other this morning, and just enjoy it wherever we're sitting at, right? Whether we're sitting on our couch or on our patio, or whether we're on or any word, and wherever we are, any whatever God has for us, wherever place we're watching it from. So it's going to be a great service today. I would encourage you to get the kids wound up. Well, maybe not wound up, that'd be crazy for church, but get them lined up if they want to watch it with you. Regardless of what it is, I'd encourage you to put your phone away. Try to avoid distraction. Unless you're watching it on your phone, then don't put it away. That doesn't make sense. But put on Do Not Disturb and do all that stuff. So it's going to be a good day today. It's going to be a great service. I know God's got some big things planned for us today, and I'm excited to find out what He has for us. So have fun, and I will see you in a little bit. All right, talk to you later. Enjoy the service.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Grace Church Online. So excited to be with you and that we can be together here virtually, and want to take a minute just to welcome you. My name's Josh. I'm one of our pastors here, and we've got an awesome service planned today. We're going to have some songs from the band here in just a minute, and we'll get to sing together. And then we've been in a series called Stops Along the Way, and Pastor Joe's going to continue that conversation here right now, and then we also will end with a few more songs at the end of our service. But take a minute and get settled in, and why don't you, if you're able to, share this on social media, or maybe text a friend, or even start a watch party. It'd be great to encourage others to watch this service with you and invite them to join you today right now. Before we get started though, I would love to let you know how you can connect during the service today. You can chat with anyone live in one of those chat boxes, whatever platform you're on. You also can download our app, and you can search for Grace Ohio in the App Store, get that on your phone, and take some notes today, see some of the other things that are a part of our weekend experience. But Grace is more than just a weekend as well, and you can find other ways to connect on there, like groups that are both in person and virtual, different events that are coming up, and even ways to volunteer. And we would love to connect with you that way. And so check that out on the app. We'd also love to give you a minute just to know how to give if you want to partner with us. We so appreciate how we get to still be the church and figure out how to pursue relationships even during the summer and even during some of our different limitations. And so thank you for partnering with us. And for those of you who have began to give to Grace, you can do that online or by texting to give. And it's why we make it a part of our weekend services, because it's a part of our worship and a way of giving back to God. So thank you for doing that. We're about to get started, but would love to just have this moment of encouragement, this message from Pastor Jeff that he wants to share with us. So let's go ahead and tune into that right now.
Well, hello, Bath Campus family. I want to talk with you guys about how Grace Church Bath Campus wants to interact with you and interact with our community over the next 9 or 10 weeks. All of us are kind of learning that most schools are going to delay their start or do everything online for the next 9 or 10 weeks. And of course, we want to be there for you and there for our community in the middle of all this. I've likened this idea a little bit to what would have happened if a tornado hit our community, right? If the tornado hit the community, the church will respond very quickly. But we would respond in a unique way because some of our homes would have been hit by that tornado. Some of our homes wouldn't have been hit. And so some of us need to be served, and then some of us need to do the serving. And so we're trying to respond very, very quickly so that you know that we're here for you and we can help you, resource you if that's what you need, and that we can be here for our greater community as well. So here's kind of our 3 outlets that we're going to be setting up. We want to refresh, we want to resource, and we want to respond. We want to create environments where you can get a break. Maybe you're both working at home and the kids are there too. So how can we help bring refreshment to you and or to our community? We want to resource you. And we want to set up toolboxes online so that you have different resources, perhaps for devotional purposes, maybe even like homeschooling schedules and resources that if you're not into that world, you wouldn't know about, as well as connections that can be made, whether here directly at the church in our buildings, or maybe just relationally throughout our community. And then we want to respond. For some of us, this is not going to hit our home as directly, and so there may be a little bit of bandwidth to serve our greater community, whether that's by serving families that are already a part of Grace Church, are serving the greater Akron area and some of the needs that are occurring because of what's been happening. So I want you to know that this is coming. You can begin to look at the website, begin to look at the app, and of course we're acting very quickly as well because this is kind of new information. But you're going to see that as a church and as a church family, we're going to be rolling these resources out, rolling these opportunities out, and rolling this ability to respond out kind of in real time. And want you to know that it's there, that we're with you, that we're with our community, and that we're going to lock arms and walk through this time together. So keep your eye on the website, keep your eye out on the app, keep your ear to the ground a little bit, and we want to refresh you, we want to have opportunities, we want to resource you, and we want to respond to this crisis that we're in right now.
Well, hey everybody, it's really good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. We got this brand new song I'm really excited about. So wherever you are, I'd encourage you to engage with these lyrics. But it goes like this.
by. Lift your hands to the heavens, lift your voice to the sky. Praise the Lord of all creation, let his name be lifted high.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm excited to dive into a stop along the way today. My name is Joe. If we haven't had a chance to meet before, I'm one of the pastors here at Grace, and excited to be in this series that we've been in this summer, kind of looking at how Jesus has been interacting with his disciples, how they respond and react to what he says and does, and of course then how we can do the same. Now, as you're sitting there in your couch or at your dining room table, maybe it's at your back patio, wherever you might be, go ahead and take a moment and go ahead and share the service. Let people know that you're watching this. Maybe you can start a dialogue with them. Go ahead and let your friends and your family be able to dive into this conversation as we look at another stop along the way. Make sure you have your app ready. Let's take some notes together. Let's process these things together. And if you have a Bible with you, we're going to open up to Mark 12, so you might want to go ahead and do that. But it's going to be a great time, again, as we start to look at these words of Jesus and have him actually direct our path as we look at some of the things that are kind of the most important, as he says, that are all throughout the scripture. So we're going to dive into that. This has been fun. Of course, if you've missed some of these, you won't need to catch up for today, but you might want to. There's been a lot of great conversations. Check out our app. Check out our website. You'll see lots of ways to kind of connect along with these stops along the way with Jesus. Now, here's the setting where we're at right now. Jesus is actually talking with some different teachers of the law. He's engaging with his disciples, and they're actually trying to trick him when it comes to all of the different nuances that happen to be a part of the law of God or the law of the Jewish tradition at the time, and how can they navigate that? And so we're going to dive right in, Mark chapter 12, verse 28, where Jesus is actually asked a pretty imposing question. Let's take a look at this. One of the teachers of the law came and heard the disciples, heard the teachers of the law debating, and noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer to one of their other questions, he asked him, of all of the commandments, which one is the most important? Now, I think this is incredibly intriguing for us to realize why this question would even be asked. Why would this be something that this teacher would be interested in? And what type of response would Jesus be able to give? I think it's fascinating for two reasons. One, we have to understand that we're in the midst of them trying to trick Jesus, get him stumble on his words, maybe even disagree with things he said before. But there's also this bigger context that we need to realize that the Jewish law, or as we would look at it, the Old Testament has for us 613 different commands that were considered a part of the law. And all of these commands, they swirled around, and as a good Jewish religious person, as someone that believed in God and wanted to follow him, they tried to make sure that these laws were taken care of in their daily lives. But what that often meant for them was they were trying to figure out, how can I maybe see which ones are the most important? Which ones maybe do I not need to pay as much attention to? Which ones are going to get me the most trouble? Which ones are going to kind of make me in God's good graces the most? Like, there's a way to start looking at and manipulating the law that would be on everybody's mind because there's 613 commands. Now, if you've ever had the opportunity, and if you've ever looked through the Old Testament, you'll see, and especially in these first 5 books, as you get into Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, Moses, who's the writer of those, starts to lay out a bunch of this. And if you've read through it, some of them are kind of confusing. Some of them seem repetitive. Some of them are like, why on earth would that be a law? Like, I wrote a few down. One was, don't eat shellfish. I love shrimp. You probably like shrimp and or lobster, all those kind of shellfish, but that was a law. You can't do that. Don't wear clothing made from 2 types of material. Okay, that's a big uh-oh. Don't cut the edges off of your beard. How about this one? When the time comes, make sure you sacrifice a spotless ram. Now, I'm sure every one of us are doing that about every chance that we get, right? That's a law that was there. And celebrate the festival of booths, right? Like, what do you mean a festival? What are you talking about with booths? It does explain it in there, but when some of these laws start to pop up, we start to wonder, well, why? Why would God put that in the scripture? Now, I'm not going to dive specifically today on why God had all of these different types of law in his word, but I will give you a head nod. Later this week, we're going to drop our weekend extra. We do this every weekend. And I'm actually going to dive into that question. How does God categorize some of those laws? Why would they be there? That'll be a question that we answer for you. So make sure you jot that down or get ready to click over to that later this week. So we have these 613 laws, right? And this is the context that Jesus is being asked that question. Which of these laws, of all of these commandments, which one is the most important? Now, Jesus is really starting to understand that they're trying to mess him up, and they're trying to talk through all of these thou shalt do's and thou shan't nots do, these different types of laws, and they're trying to get off the hook for something, or they're trying to get Jesus on the hook for something, and they're curious, what is Jesus's response going to be? Now, here's why we know that they're trying to trip Jesus up. Because if you move back even just a few verses in this passage, they start talking about this kind of arbitrary, made-up, hypothetical expression of the law. So, there's a family that had 7 brothers. One of them gets married. This is what they're trying to trip Jesus up with. One of them gets married, but he dies and he leaves his widow behind. Now, the Jewish law would say that that wife is actually then supposed to marry one of her deceased husband's brothers, because in those ancient times, women needed to be connected to the patriarchal society. They needed the man in their life to make sure that they had access to all the things they needed to live. And so the brother would step in and take care of the wife in those ways. But in their scenario, the second brother dies. So the wife marries the third brother, and then he dies, and so on and so forth, until she has married all 7 brothers. And then here comes the big law-dropping question. They say, okay, Jesus, when she gets to heaven, which one of them is her husband? Now, this is nuts. Like, why would we even ask this question? Why would this even be something of value to us? This is completely hypothetical, almost completely impossible. And yet, not only are we asking the question, not are we spending time arbitrating over how this would play out, but this is what we're trying to trip Jesus up on. And so it's all of these types of questions that they're kind of nerding out on. They're getting so into the nuances, so into the minutia, making up scenarios. But I'll be honest, I started to, at first, when I read that this week, I thought, that is ridiculous. Why would they do that? Why would they take a law, and why would they make these situations happen? And I started to realize, maybe I do that more than I realize. Maybe I start making up scenarios so that I can get myself out of something that God wants me to do. Maybe you do that too. Maybe this is something we share with the disciples, share with the Pharisees and the teachers of the law of the day, where we start to look at different rules, different laws, and kind of instantly in our mind build up hypotheticals or build scenarios where we don't have to pay attention to them as closely as they were intended. So for instance, this idea that we're supposed to be generous, this idea that we're supposed to give of what we have to help others, have we not kind of justified in our minds that maybe being generous could just be generosity with our time? That generosity could just be, I'll help you with something, but money, I'm going to keep that to myself. So I'll be generous in other ways. We start to look for ways to get around that. Or I know I shouldn't talk like that person, but you don't understand how mad they made me. And so we start to look for justifications to get past the behaviors that we had, the words that we've said. Or If we're in some type of a relationship romantically, we start asking the question, well, how far is too far? I mean, am I allowed to, if I'm not technically sleeping with them, are we allowed to do this? Can we say this? Can we look at this? Can we experience this? And that's not technically, and we start to try to figure out a way to kind of get by what we kind of understand is the bigger rule. Or it's just a little white lie, right? It's just something, it's a small untruth. Does it really hurt anybody? Because all I really did was elevate myself a tad so they don't judge me as much, and I don't want to have that conversation. It's not worth getting into. And so you can see it's easy to kind of slip into this mentality, to slip into this kind of argumentative, almost arbitrary conversation, and at times straight up manipulative way to look at the commandments or the rules or the laws that are put before us. And this is the context that Jesus is asked this question. Here's an arbitrary, hypothetical, how would you let this law play out? And then Jesus, which one of all of these 613 is the most important? And Jesus is about to go straight to the source, straight to the law. He goes right to Deuteronomy 6. He goes right to Leviticus 19. And he answers succinctly and powerfully. He says this. He says, the most important one, answered Jesus, is hear this, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. I love this because imagine their reactions, right? Because they're trying to trick him and they're trying to make it complicated because there's so many commandments and laws to choose from. But Jesus answers definitively, and Jesus gives two commandments. The teacher asked, which is the greatest? And Jesus gives two, which I find to be fascinating. I don't know about you. That's not Jesus just not hearing the question correctly. He's not just trying to get extra credit. He's actually saying these two together become the greatest commandment. And so as we take a look at how this kind of starts to play out, we see that the default way that they're looking at all of this is actually through a mindset of rules. Right? They're looking at these 613. They're looking at all of these different commandments saying, which rules do I have to follow? Draw me the lines. Show me the barriers. Show me the black and white nature of how this is supposed to play out. Show me how I can follow the rules to know what I'm supposed to do. And part of that for us comes from kind of two motivations. One, we like to know where the lines are so we can make a decision as to whether or not they're okay to cross. And we also want to know where those lines are because we want to be a little bit in control, okay? And so they're asking this question. I think this is where we're at, and yet Jesus is implying that when you focus too much on the rules, you start to let yourself go down a pathway that's almost more of a pathway of accusation as opposed to life. Jesus is saying there's something more than just which rule is more important, so to speak, but there's something at play when you can actually show that love is at the greatest pinnacle of these. And so I started to think of some scenarios and conversations that I've had with people lately and in years past where they're thinking like, I'm following the rules, but I don't necessarily love the person, and this is how it's playing out. You know, I can see people saying things like, well, I'm right. I have figured this out. They're wrong. And it could even be as something kind of gospelish, like this is something I know to be true from God in the scriptures. And because they don't believe with it, they're wrong, and therefore I'm out. I don't want anything to do with them. What Jesus is starting to show them is that mindset, the fact that you're not loving them through that conversation, that in and of itself is actually wrong. That in and of itself is actually sin. Or maybe we have a conversation with someone where we realize that they're 100% fully diving into some type of sinful or negative activity and behavior, and we don't want to be associated with that. And like, because they're associated with that sin, I want nothing to do with them. Well, that's also not very loving. And what Jesus is starting to point out here with how the law works is that's also wrong. That's not how this plays out. You see, I think when we put ourselves in a little bit of a scenario of how we interact with rules, we can start to see how we start to enter this conversation. For instance, if you're a little bit more of a rebellious type, you start looking for ways that the law doesn't apply to you. You start looking for ways that the rules don't mean much. And so, for instance, if you drive around the Akron area, drive around the Fairlawn area at all, there's been a detour down the road, right, on Cleveland, Massillon, and Gent, and it says that you're not supposed to take Y Road, W-Y-E. You're not supposed to take that road because the road is closed, local traffic only. Well, I started to justify to myself because I knew that road wasn't actually physically closed. They were just trying to keep the traffic down. And I'm like, I work a mile on the other side of that road and I live a mile on the other side of that road. I'm going to deem myself as local traffic and avoid the road closed sign. I deemed that rule did not apply to me, right? And we do this with stuff all the time. We're like, for some reason, we elevate ourselves above a rule. We elevate ourselves above a law because sometimes we get that little bit of a rebellious nature in us and we start to look for a way out. Now, some of us are rule followers, right? Some of us, as we kind of look at laws and stuff, we're like, no, you have to follow it, right? Whether it's driving exactly 55 down the highway or whatever it might be, I want to follow the rule. I can think of people, and honestly, I can think of myself at times where I might say something like, well, I came to church. Well, yeah, but you were on your phone the whole time. Like, if we're a rule follower, our temptation is to try to figure out how to check the box. Well, I did the thing, back off on how I interacted with it, right? Well, I read the Bible for 3 seconds this morning and already forget what I read. What I read. Like, I did the thing, don't bother me, right? We're looking so much to check the box that you did the right thing that we lose sight of the relational connectivity of why that might be there in the first place. Jesus is getting at this, that any literal rule that we find ourselves trying to follow that then somehow supplants the bigger rule is incorrect. Jesus actually says this in another passage. He says, you blind guides, you strain out the gnat and then you swallow a camel. Like, yeah, good job. You got this little thing out of the way, but you missed the big picture. We actually are completely missing what Jesus is trying to get across with the different laws and different rules. And so we try to be a rule follower. We try to do those things. He's like, hey, you're missing the point. And that's where I think Jesus's genius is when he starts to plan out and show how this loving God and loving others things helps us the most. So Jesus is helping us understand that our relationships, our interactions with people may not be as black and white as we think. It's not always about being who's right and who's wrong. It's not always about finding a line and making sure that someone's over there and that we're over here. And even when we try to do that, it gets messier than we intend. I was talking with a young couple, they were preparing for marriage, and one of the things they talked about kind of the rules for marriage, are like, you know what? When it comes to kind of the idea of our loyalty and our trust for each other, as long as you don't cheat on me, that's the line, that's where we stand, and as long as you're not cheating on me, we're good. And the other spouse was like, I mean, I think I kind of get what you're saying, but what's your definition of cheat? Like, is cheat like full on having an intimate moment with someone else? Is it actually other types of sexual activity? Is it just flirting in the office? Is it looking at things online that are pornographic? Or like, where's the line of what it means to cheat on someone, to make them feel like you're no longer interested and loyal and giving yourself to that person in marriage? And so we tend to think that, we can draw that line so clearly, but then we can make it complex based on how the relationship plays out. Here's why this is such a big deal. Because when we start to draw these lines and we start to try to say, I'm right, you're wrong, or even humbly, you're right and I'm wrong, what we assume is that God's choosing one of those sides. We start to assume that once I've figured out what's correct, once I've figured out what's true, that God's going to pick the true side. And I think that what's unfortunately wrong about that is that we have flipped who's in charge. We have flipped who's the magnet and who's the one being attracted. Because if we have this subconscious thought that once I determine what's correct, then I know God's on my side, then what we've said is I'm the one that sets up the law. I'm the one that sets up truth. I'm the one that sets up and that makes no sense. God is trying to say, I am God. I'm the creator. I am the one that is all powerful, all knowing, all good. I am the one that is setting the stage to draw you to what is good and what is true and what is helpful and what is lovely and pure and so on. I want you to know me. I don't want you to figure out life and then I'll determine if I'm going to be a part of you. You see, rules, either way, they're going to tempt us, right, into trying to tweak them, bend them, or break them. And then we're going to try to see if God will get on our side. The problem when we are starting to use the law as the source of everything that we're doing is there's no vision behind it. There's not a law that exists in today's normal everyday life that inspires good behavior. No one looks at the 55 mile an hour sign and says, you know what? Because I see that 5-5 so nicely written on that white rectangular sign, I just can't wait to listen to the roar of my engine hum as I drive it at its perfect optimum speed, at a perfect optimum safety amongst the others that are enjoying this beautiful drive. Like, no. We look at 55 and go, yeah, ish, right? Like we're not inspired to follow the law. We look at the law as a way to bend it, tweak it, break it, right? And we do that with so many things. And so the law in and of itself isn't what inspires us. Love is the only thing that can do that. So let's take a look at some of these questions that we asked earlier, right? We talked about generosity and how sometimes it's like, you know what? Do I really need to give my money? Do I really need to do the thing that seems so blaringly obvious right here in front of me? When we look at love, we realize, well, love is kind. And love is not self-seeking. So love isn't trying to figure out how to not be generous. Love isn't figuring out how to get away from being more generous. Love is actually trying to figure out how, in my circumstances, can I be generous, right? Love leads us to a different conclusion. We ask the question, well, I know that I shouldn't talk like that, but you don't understand how mad I was. Well, love is patient, and love doesn't keep a record of wrong. Love looks at someone and realizes, I know you're making me angry, but maybe you're hurting. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you're fearful. Maybe you're not sure what's going on. And even though this situation is welling up anger inside of me, I'm going to look for a way that I can love you in my response, right? And so love brings us to a different action. How far is too far? We start looking at our dating relationships and we start to say, well, am I allowed to get this close to the line? Am I allowed to do this? Can I do this? Can we do? And we start asking, but love always protects. Love would look at our significant other and say, how can I protect you? How can I make sure that not only are you closer with God, but how can we actually build this relationship on a strong foundation and protect you from the pain and the hurt that God's trying to help us avoid from the beginning when it comes to these types of commands? Or we can look at, it's just a little white lie. It's not a big deal. It's just something that I can get away with for sure. But love always trusts. And so love is something where we actually build a relationship together. Trust is a currency in relationship. And even little white lies are small chisels and hammers breaking apart at our ability to trust one another. It may not be one sweeping lie, but as we continue to create cracks in that relationship, suddenly we find ourselves in a place where I don't know that I trust you anymore. And that's not the pathway of love. I remember as we start to think about these rules, I remember when I was a youth pastor, and it was so fun. We'd go on these retreats, or we would go, to conferences or on missions trips, and we would go to these places. And I remember I would start a lot of these meetings or a lot of these weekends. I say, hey, listen, I got 2 rules. All right, I got 2 rules, and that's all I have to start things off. I said, 1, don't do anything I have to call an ambulance for, all right? And they would all chuckle a little bit, but at the same time, they kind of understood what I was coming from. And the second one I said, don't do anything that I have to create another rule for, all right? And I would definitely get a chuckle out of that one, but that one also started to kind of resonate with them that, okay, like, can I do this thing that's starting to get into my head? Can I start to push the envelope? because they would know me and they would understand me and they would know where I'm coming from and they would know, gosh, if I push that envelope, he's probably going to make another rule about that and then I'm going to be. And so we would have those conversations, right? Whenever they would push the envelope. I remember one young couple, they asked, like, is it okay? We're not supposed to show PDA, right? And I said, no, you're not at all. And they're like, okay, got it. Well, so they got it in their head that they weren't going to do any public displays of affection, right? They're going to be on this retreat and they're not going to, kiss each other in front of everybody and hold hands all the time in front of everybody, all that kind of stuff. Well, then like one night walking back to the cabins, I see him making out, right? Right next to the cabin. I'm like, guys, we just talked about it. It's like, what? It's not public. No one else is around. I'm like, they're trying to tweak, right, this rule and trying to get around even the simple ones that I would lay out before these events. And so rules are not inspiring. And that lack of rules, it didn't incite some type of anarchy, but it always leads us to some type of how can I manipulate this? Love changes the conversation. Love, and that's why Jesus said it's the greatest commandment, because it helps us to filter everything else that he wants to talk to us about. It helps us understand everything else that he asks us to do or not to do. And so let's take a look at a couple of examples on how love changes a version of a rule that we may or may not understand. So for instance, you find yourself of age with a good friend and you'd like to drink a small amount of alcohol, right? That's fine. No big deal, right? Well, what if you're with a friend that either is or has struggled as an alcoholic? Suddenly, that thing that at the moment you're like, that's okay, if it's about love, is not okay. We can't enter into that situation and say, I'm actually loving my friend the best by waving this drink in front of them when I know the type of pain and struggles they've had. You see, love is always going to supersede the rule. No matter what rule we come up with, love is going to go above and beyond. Love is going to help us interpret whatever it is that's in front of us. And so it doesn't matter if something is technically okay, if it hurts others, if it reminds someone of a traumatic experience, you stop. If you realize, right, that it's offensive to them, you double click and you realize maybe this isn't something that we should do. If you realize that your actions are a stumbling block to someone else and making them go down a dark path, you stop, right? And if you realize that it brings dishonor to God, you quit, right? Love supersedes the rule. When we understand that we want to love the relationship, love the person more than just trying to follow the rules, it informs how we navigate those situations. Now, different example, if I want to show love to my neighbor, right? I want to show them that I care for them, that I'm here for them, that Jesus loves them. You're going to bring them peanut butter cookies, right? Like that's the way to show them love. Well, not if they have a peanut allergy. That's probably more what you do to someone you hate. Just kidding, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that, right? You do want to bring peanut butter cookies to me. That would be a great way to show me that you love me. That'd be awesome. I'll give you my address later. But if you want to love someone, we also have to realize that love is personal. Love interacts with each individual uniquely. There are things that mean something to them, right? And so I remember my wife, when I first brought her a rose, she thought it was super cute. She thought it was great. She's like, wow, this is kind of neat that this guy brought me a rose. Well, I later learned that roses aren't her thing. At the moment, it was cool. It was nice because some guy that she liked brought it to her. That was personal. But then as I realized in the relationship that wasn't going to make sense, I did something that was more to her liking. I started getting her favorite flowers if I bought her flowers, because love is a personal thing. As we navigate this season that we're in, you might say, you know what, I'm going to take cookies over to my neighbor. I know they're going through a hard time. And cookies might end up being a nice gesture, right? But what if they're gluten-free? Like the gesture's nice, but it didn't go as far as you wanted it. Or what if they don't need cookies? What if they need help through this crazy school season? What if they're going nuts and just need a break? Can someone come over and watch my kids for an hour? What if they have no idea where to start with school and it's totally boggling their mind? What if their work schedule is so intense that it's the only way they can provide for their family, but they can't be there in real time with their kids? It's a way for us to love people personally. Where are they at? What would express the most love? We can look at things and say, like, well, cookies is a great way to express love. But what would personally interact with their need in their situation the best? Now, another place that we could look is, well, what if something seems arbitrary and it's not really that big a deal and I can't really find any rules or laws about it? That means I can just do whatever I want, right? Like I can just do what feels right to me. Well, I don't think that works out very well either. For instance, some of you have pointed out over the last few weeks that I shaved my beard off again, right? Well, that's because there are two people in my life that I love more than anyone else besides Jesus himself, and that's my wife and my daughter. And you know the two people who don't like it when I have a beard is my wife and my daughter, right? They both, when they get close to me, they don't like the way a beard feels. And so for me to love them better, right, I shaved it off. Now, I even prefer to have a beard, but it's not a big deal to me because I want to love them. Because what else is love? Love is relational, right? Love is something that we actually look at the relationship and we ask ourselves, how can I build into our bond? How can I build into our connectedness? How can I do something that loves you in a way that brings us closer together? Now, this is a big deal with people. This is a big deal. Maybe it's a family member or a community member. Maybe it's your actual physical neighbor. And who is going to determine what it takes to make them feel loved is how you build the relationship. It's things that you can't know right away. It's why consistent engagement, consistent relationship over time always tends to be the most powerful way to influence someone's life, because it's relational and it's intentional. We allow ourselves to figure out, how can I love this person in a beautiful way, in a way that means something to them, in a way that communicates, I'm paying attention to you and what you like. Now, we may figure out that, you know what, I have this friend and I love texting them at night and I love shooting them messages and funny pictures and all this kind of stuff. And we always do it. They absolutely love it. And it's fine, right? It doesn't matter how the world changes. It doesn't matter what changes in our life. We can always do the same thing, right? Well, what if that person gets married? What if suddenly you find yourself texting a married man or a married woman in the middle of the night that was your friend before, and now is it getting awkward? Maybe suddenly they have early morning responsibilities and you're used to texting them at 1 or 2 in the morning, and all of a sudden like, hey, I got to wake up in 4 hours. Like I can't respond back and forth at this time, right? The reason that this kind of role, we want to kind of step our foot down and almost get a principle of like, no, I'm allowed to do that. We've always done that. It's always worked that way. Why can't I love? When we look at it through the context of love, love allows for growth. You see, instead of us drawing the lines of what's right and wrong in those scenarios, we see that love in that relationship will grow and it will mature and things will change, and we just find new ways to love each other. When you're first in a dating relationship or you find yourself early on in a marriage, you may just want to hold each other's hands every time you're in the same room together. You always want to sit next together. You always want to intertwine your fingers. You want to show that you absolutely love each other. And when you grow a little bit older, you may realize that the way that we can love each other the most is by actually letting you have a little bit of free time to yourself, right? Like it's not so much that you don't want to be together. It's just, hey, I gotta have a little bit of quiet time. I need to get some voices out of my head. I need to spend some time with God. I need a little bit of time to refresh. And so even when you get older still, you may realize that now loving that person is a deep tissue massage to help them through their chronic back pain. Right? Love grows, right? And it can be as practical as those things, or it can even be super subtle. It can be different lines that you have to draw with friends, but love grows. And so instead of just looking at the black and white of how a rule plays out or how a principle is engaged in your life, we allow for those things to adjust and mature and change. Now, if I understand how humanity works, I know how my mind works, I know how my heart works. If I had to guess, some of you are already doing some of that tweaking math with some of these examples. And you're starting to look at things like, well, my boyfriend says that he feels more loved when I do these things. So is that how I start with love? Or, well, my friend says that it's no big deal if I drink in front of him. So it's okay, even though he does or used to struggle with that this doesn't bother him. Well, my political party says that it's an antiquated mindset if I think that way and I have those thoughts. So love really looks like this. Or, well, my boss and I, we make more money, right? When we do things this way, we both make more money. No one else really notices, and it makes us both happy, and it's kind of a way to love my boss. So yeah, we're going to continue to do it that way. Or, well, gosh, I feel like my spouse just isn't the same person that I married. And we start to define love when it comes how to love other people. When Jesus says, love your neighbor, we're like, you know what? If love looks like this, then I guess I got to make some hard decisions, and I guess I'm going to do these things. But Jesus put these two commandments together for a reason, to love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And God put that one first for a reason. You see, Jesus says that all of the commandments, all of the rules, all of those life principles, they're going to hang on the balance of these two commandments, to love others, but to love God first. Because you see, when we start to look at the things in our life that we want to adjust because we love somebody, we have to go back, but is this loving to God first? Is this something that helps me grow with Him first? This helps make the law simpler because it's just love God and love others, but it also makes it wonderfully more complex. Because now as we look at these relationships, it's the simple question, does this love God? Okay, does this love others? But now we have to find the nuance of how that's going to play out. When we start to ask God for His definition of how to love others, when we start to ask Him, God, is this the thing that will please you the most? Is this the thing that draws us most closely together? That begins to finally build the bridge of what's best. And we can actually have a conversation about commandments or rules or laws in a way that actually plays out in the long run, as opposed to blowing things up because we thought we were interpreting it in a specific way. God wants us to look to Him first because it will engage us, it will define us, and it will motivate us to love in the best way possible. And that's our fifth thing that love does when we start to look at it first. When we start to engage what we do or don't want to do with people, when we start to look at the things that God asks us to do, the hard things, do I want to make this shift? Do I want to make this move? Do I want to start interacting that way? Do I want to stop doing this in my own life? The more that we connect with God first through our heart, our mind, our soul, our strength, it actually begins to transform our heart, our mind, and our soul and give us the strength to do the things in the most loving way. I love this passage that Jesus uses in the Gospel of John, in the book of John. And Jesus says, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. It's another way for Him to say the same thing, that if you seek God with your heart and your soul and your mind and your strength first, you'll obey what I command. The rest of the law hangs on these two things. The best way to interact with your boyfriend or your girlfriend is through starting with Him. The best way to start interacting with your classmates or your coworkers is to start with Him. The best way to survive the craziness of what's about to come with this weird school season is to start with Him. The best way to survive with your marriage and you've been cooped up in the house is with Him. The best way to engage with people and to love them best is to love Him first. When our heart begins to be transformed by Christ, when our mind starts to see things the way that he does, when we start to hear his voice in every nuance and opportunity in front of us on how to best interact with that person, then not only does it work out best, but we can trust that we're a partner with God as he interacts with that person in their heart and their mind. So when Jesus answers the question, what's the greatest commandment? It's not arbitrary. It's not random. It's not even just which rule scores the best. Jesus is giving us a filter through which to understand the way to connect with God, to connect with our Savior, to connect with our Creator, and then also the best way to filter out our relationships with our family, our friends, our neighbors, and our community. God, what do you want? What would be the best? How can I be an agent of real love that moves things forward? The simplicity of all of this is beautiful, and the complexity of it is transformational. If we want to allow love to define us and direct us, if we want to see ourselves doing more of the things that God asks, doing less of the things that we know we shouldn't do, then it all starts with going to him and saying, God, how can I love you more? How can I love you more and see you more and more clearly and interact with you more and more closely so that as I interact with the other people in my life, relationships are built, eyes are turned to you, lives are changed, people are helped. Love changes everything. Jesus knew that. He said, everything else that I'm asking of you hangs on that. We're going into a weird season. We've been in a weird season. And if we're just trying to muscle up the strength to get through, if we're just trying to make sure that we have our wits about us to just navigate our schedules, we're going to miss an opportunity to find the empowerment, the correction, the strength to love the people in our life the best way possible. And we're going to miss an opportunity to see our lives transformed as well. As we move into a time of worship, reflection, and prayer, will you pray with me that your heart would be open to engaging Christ in the way that he's calling us to himself, so that through that loving relationship, we can love others the best way possible. Will you pray with me? God, thank you for this clear encouragement that we could be stuck looking at 613 commands and trying to navigate everything and then be stuck in our own temptation to tweak it all. But instead, you boil it down to how can we seek you in love? And then how can we take that same love and encouragement and give it to others? God, I pray that you would change our hearts. I pray that you would renew us. I pray that you would help us as we read, as we pray, as we pause, as we reflect, that you would show us more of yourself, that we would sense that closeness with you as we pursue you and seek you. And Father, I pray that that would be something that changes us from the inside out, and we allow ourselves to love others in a great and powerful way. That through this season that's in front of us, that kids in our households, kids in our neighborhoods, kids all around the community would find refreshment in you. That neighborhoods, that community members, that parents, that coworkers would find a freshness because of our interaction with you and how that translates to our relationship with them. Use us, Jesus. Show us your love and help us to give that to others. And it's your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
And here I stand before you now, as honestly as I know how. I'm broken by the days gone by. Spirit held my soul to rise.
It's on. It's working.
Oh, well, I faded it out.
Okay.